No, it's at 2. It's at 2 still. We're live. We're about to get started with our group discussion. I don't know if you can hear me. You can hear me? Okay, I think you can hear
I
me.
don't know. It was here, and then I fell asleep and woke up, and this was there.
The one, it's in my car. It's in my car. Yes. No, I just threw it in there. Yes, it's in my car. Charging. Okay. Uh, group discussion. Today we read Day 7, Book 7. Until We Reckon by Danielle. Get live. See how this works on Instagram. Okay. I don't think so. I don't think so, but it'll have to be like how it was before on
You don't
Facebook.
want it to be like how it was before? It'll have to be like
It'll have to be. It'll have to
So
be.
they got to turn it.
Yeah, well, they got
Let
to
me
turn
see
it.
if I can turn it.
I don't know. Okay. So let's start there. Day 7. Been a week. Been a week doing this.
Crooked. It's throwing me off.
Okay, go ahead.
Damn,
No, oh, damn. So much feedback and the noise. No. Look at
Damn, now.
Overcorrection. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, that's good. That's
Oh,
good.
yeah,
Yeah,
that's good.
That's good.
It seemed like it's not right, but it is.
Yeah, it is. It is.
It seemed like it's not, but it is.
I'm like
Like for
taller
us,
than you.
Okay.
To my distance. Let's start there. Day 7, Book 7. How do you feel? Weekend. Just a weekend of this ongoing teaching. Okay, go ahead.
Okay. Yeah.
Day 7, Book 7.
Day 7, book 7. I think that this book specifically. Damn, I gotta call back. Okay. This book for me feels very poignant to read at the stance in which we've read it. A lot of the things at the point in which we're reading it, a lot of the things that we've read up to this point have been about dealing with the system from the end of people inside the system being victimized and being victims and being traumatized. And this book is sort of speaking about before that process even. And I guess not before the process, but on the side of that process, the type of interaction between the person committing a crime and or doing something that victimizes somebody, and then the person that is victimized, and how to form some type of healing and empathy and between those two people outside of just locking people up away in jail or probation or parole, or the penal system as we know it. So I think that it's been it's nice to get it's nice to not get too caught up in only looking at it from one way. This has sort of let us see everything that we've been reading. The new Jim Crow doesn't really touch on people who may feel like people who sold drugs victimized them by their family members being on drugs, or doesn't really touch on people who maybe robbed somebody or beat somebody up, about what that person feels about their the punishment that they have. And so hearing this be about people outside of the system, I thought was very timely.
The term restorative justice, it's not a term I was familiar with a year ago. A year ago I was not familiar with this term. And through these 10 months, I wouldn't say, up until reading this, I wasn't really that familiar with what the concept actually was. I just, the first time I heard it, somebody talk about it and somebody explained it a little bit was Terry, and just through Terry talking about it and what his different thoughts on what justice should be. What do you think? Go ahead. Have you ever heard of that term before, or what is your understanding of it now?
I had heard of the term. I had only heard of the term since these last 10 months. I'd only heard of the term since knowing Terry. Terry introduced me to the term. And again, I would even say up until reading Until We Reckon, I had just heard, understood the philosophy or understood the concept of restorative justice very in a very elementary standpoint. Basically, and as far as I understood what the definition of restorative was, and as far as I understood what the definition of justice was, to me, that was what I thought restorative justice was. It was very interesting to me to read the chapter in which I read, in which there was an application of restorative justice, in which you've seen it being applied, in which they gave an example of someone having a crime committed to them, being assaulted, and then the person who was the victim and the person who was the perpetrator having inroads for them to communicate and work together to heal the trauma that had been caused. And so to read about that in practice was very eye-opening. They had excerpts from the journal of one of the young girl who had victimized somebody, who was now dealing with the restorative justice system, and she wrote in her diary about how she had learned to she wrote in her diary an excerpt where you can see that she had realized how to tap into that empathy and how to put herself in the shoes of this person that she victimized. And I thought that was very very poignant. I also thought the philosophy that is being espoused in here that she has, where she believes that everybody can access empathy, and everybody has some type of capacity for empathy, and it's just the fact that some people haven't been taught haven't been afforded the luxury to realize that, things that may have been done to them were hurtful, and that's why they can't empathize, because they can't put themselves in the shoes of being hurt, because society has never allowed them to be comfortable with being hurt. So when they hurt somebody, because hurt people, it's hard for them to accept. It's hard for them to deal with empathy, because when they think about how they would feel in the situation, they don't feel anything, because society has invalidated, their emotions and feelings. And so just in that little portion that I read, I'm going to have to go back and listen to some of the things that other people read. And of course, all of these books that I haven't fully read, I will be going back and reading in full. I was doing some highlighting in some of the sections that I was reading as well. This was as opposed to maybe The Rise of the Warrior Cop and Locking Up Our Own, the last two books we read, where philosophically and ideologically we may not line up with the people all the way, but the facts that they were presenting and the concepts that they were presenting were very pertinent. Understanding those were very pertinent into being able to communicate and have dialogue about the ending of mass incarceration, police terrorism, and racial injustice. We are now in a situation where I believe this person ideologically and philosophically is aligned with us, and we are reading about going deeper into that ideology and how to turn some of these thoughts that she has into real practice. So I think that those are some of the things that stand out to me off the portions that I've read so far.
I haven't been able to. I've been moving around in and out, so I read the introduction in the first chapter and a little bit of the second one, but I haven't had the chance to listen to some of the other people that have read. But I was when I was coming back, I was driving back here. I was listening to this one podcast that I listened to, and they were talking about a topic that's pretty heavily discussed right now in the sports world. But they were also relaying it back to Michael Vick, and talking about how Michael Vick paid his debt to society, and that phrase. It stuck with me a little bit longer than it would have had I not read this book, because I started thinking, whose debt was that? Whose debt was that? I don't think that any of these the victims in any case, and when anybody gets released from jail, it's not paying your debt to someone. The victim, the person that is victimized by actions that the person may have made, they're not healed by somebody getting sent to prison. They're not. Nothing changes for them because somebody else got sent to prison. So that just the idea that somebody went to prison, they got out, they paid their debt to society. It's not it's not a debt or anything like that. It's a punishment. That's all it is. It doesn't really change anything or help the person who was victimized at all. It doesn't do anything for them personally. It just sends them away, takes years away from their life. Then it also talks about, in the first chapter, it talks about how there was what was it? How many trials or how many cases end up in plea bargains. But that was an outstanding number. I think it was 94%, and in plea bargains. And that was just the idea of how many people are forced into plea bargains. That idea, that when I read that number, that kind of stuck with me. But the idea that people aren't, when somebody gets sent to jail, that doesn't bring comfort to nobody. She had rather talked about how one of her mentors, I believe her name was Annie. I believe her mentor Annie. She had a incident where they broke into her house. She was assaulted and they robbed her and things like that. And she asked Annie if, and everything worked out the way it was supposed to in the criminal justice system, the way it's designed. She called the police. The police showed up. They treated her with respect. They took down the case. They caught the person who did it. They charged him with crimes. He got sentenced to the heaviest crimes, to the biggest crimes. And then she asked Annie, how long did that feeling of relief last after the conviction, after the sentencing, rather? And she said only a few hours. And I sat with it more, and I realized that I still felt the same way. I still went to bed that same night. I still had them same nightmares. I still had trouble eating. I still would wake up in the middle of the night and couldn't be able to go back to sleep. So this idea that somebody getting sentenced to prison is justice, it's not true at all. Those victims are still reliving that same trauma no matter what happens to the person legally in this current system that we have now. They are not helped or aided at all by these long prison sentences. And in fact, it talked about how if a lot of times that there isn't, because there's no third option, that they feel almost like they have to do it because they don't want to do nothing. So, well, I guess I'm going to do something, but that something is sending them to prison, which is not something that they are. It's a reluctant thing. They're hoping for that third option. They're looking for the third option. And she had talked about where, in most cases where there is a third option, they choose that third option. It talked about somebody was assaulted, I believe, or robbed, and then this was in New York, and he had asked his lawyer, he had asked the person that was assaulted, and had asked the lawyer if it was an ultimatum was given. If either send them to prison, do nothing, or is that an ultimatum? If there's three. No, that's not an ultimatum. That's not an ultimatum. That's just options. There's three options that were press charges, go through the which would most likely end up with the individual being in prison. Do nothing, which was nothing, or do a restorative justice program.
Right.
And the first question was, if I press charges on this, is it possible that he can go to prison for life? Will he go to prison for life? The lawyer said no. Under New York statute, this isn't a situation where he gets sentenced to life.
Right.
So he said, okay, then just do the restorative program.
Right.
His idea was, if he can't go away forever, then I'd rather he change.
Right.
So I think that just was really profound, that a lot of the victim side of things, a lot of the victim's mindset and the input, it's almost disregarded. It's almost disregarded what the victim would like to have done.
Right.
What chapter was it that you read?
I think I read what chapter are we on now?
We're on chapter 5.
So I read half of chapter 3.
Half of chapter?
I probably read through about, that'd be 50. Oh, yeah. I probably read through about 50 or 65% of chapter 3, I feel like. It was really heavy on empathy and accountability. That was the name of the chapter. It was the power of accountability, or something about accountability. In praise of accountability. And the manner in which she spoke about accountability stuck to me very deeply. She referenced I think South Africa when apartheid ended, and I've heard a few other people reference this before, but they had these hearings in which the country openly acknowledged the colonialization that had happened, and how they had did certain things to these black people in Africa, and how they had came here and marginalized them and disenfranchised them, and oppressed them and exploited them, and then it was from that honesty and accountability, that honesty and accountability that they could they're homies. It was from that type of accountability and transparency that they could actually build towards healing these traumas that had happened in the midst of all of this stuff going on. And so for me, that was very striking. Them speaking about that type of accountability and transparency, and the manner in which she spoke about it. I'm not sure if it was like this for the introduction, but she sort of goes through steps for certain things. She had 4 steps, and I read like the last 2 steps of the accountability aspect that she had. And she said something that was that stuck with me heavily too. It was the idea that empathy was in the middle of forgiveness. She was talking about like what forgiveness is like, and she was saying that for her, forgiveness, to her, philosophically for her, that forgiveness is just not wanting harm to be done to the other person after something happens. And so I thought that was very pertinent. She had a few quotes and a few statements in there that, since this is my first time sort of diving into this thought process, they rung with me very heavily. So that was some of the things that was sort of covered in the chapter I had went through.
She talked a little bit in the early chapters, and something I was very happy that I got a chance to talk to Terry about this before he left. Right. And even though he didn't have he didn't have a chance to read this book yet, it is just knowledge that he has just throughout. He's accumulated throughout his life. But she talked about how the way the criminal justice system is set up currently, it actually hurts the victim. It hurts the victims further. She talked about how when that decision is made, and when that person is sentenced to jail, and they talk about how she had mentioned how she had often came across the phrase, a sigh of relief. The person that was victimized let out a sigh of relief. So she talked about how people who were victimized or were in a position I'll go with that. People who were victimized almost felt as if when everything got decided, they had to be relieved. They had to be cured or whatever. That the sentencing had to be the end-all, be-all cure of it. Right. When in reality, it was never that. Again, that trauma never went away. They still, and nothing was done for them. Right. They didn't. That sentencing didn't pay for services for that individual. That sentencing didn't pay for any mental health sessions for that individual. That sentencing did absolutely nothing. So it talked about just how I don't want to say stigmatization, but the almost like propaganda of the system, where this is how it works, and you should be satisfied that it worked. Right. When your black person is still reliving that night, reliving that day every single day. When I thought about how she had talked about this, and she had posed this question right here. Oh no, I lost it. Damn, that's crazy. That's crazy. Okay, no, I didn't. That's right here. She had posed these two questions. When people are deciding whether or not to call the police, they are likely to ask two questions. Will it advance my sense of safety? And will it advance my sense of justice? That that got me thinking just about things that have happened around me or things that have happened in my life. And when Carla Red had, I guess you could say, no, when Carla Red assaulted me, my first thought was, oh, I want her to be arrested. I want to press charges on her. My first thought was, why did you do that? That was my first thought. My first thought was, why did you do that? And wow, I can't believe that happened. But after that, it was a sense of, first I felt like, I don't think there's anything I can do really.
Right.
But if there was, if she was a normal citizen, I still don't believe that I would have felt, especially now, at any point in my life, really, I would have been, oh, let me call the police.
Right.
Just because I've seen people go in and out of prison my whole life. I've seen people be affected and seen the negative outcomes of this, of being in prison. So I don't think she'd be a police officer. I think she should quit or get fired or something.
Right.
But it still wasn't in a position where I felt as if, even though I was assaulted and choked and slammed on the ground, it wasn't a situation where I thought, oh, maybe because she was a police officer, but I still wouldn't. I couldn't see any situation now where knowing what I know just throughout my life about how people are negatively impacted, just the people sent to prison, but also the families. The families. I think I'm in a spot where I feel comfortable talking about this. Is my dad was in and out of prison up until I got out of high school. He was in and out of prison up until I got out of high school. And I remember he wasn't there when I was born. He wasn't there for in middle school and in and out when I was real younger. And he wasn't there for my older sister's graduation. He wasn't there for my graduation. And there were certain times where I'd get mad at him, like, why did you do this? Or why did you put yourself in a position where this could be done to us? And I almost thought he was selfish for this in doing these things. But then as more I thought about it, it became still that same type of anger, but more of an anger towards the systems that put him in the position to where he felt like he had to do the things that he did, the situations that, the systems rather, that put him in a position where he almost didn't have no other type of choice.
Right.
And so it became more of an anger towards the system and more of an anger towards... Now, when I say the system, I don't mean I didn't have nearly as good of an understanding as I do now. It was just a general hatred towards this institution. Towards the institution, yes. So I'm going to pose this question to you. I'm sorry I went off on a little bit, but what do you just think about the almost propaganda towards the criminal justice system?
I think that interestingly enough, the section that I read of Rise of the Warrior Cop spoke on this. They had a segment a section in Rise of the Warrior Cop where you could see where they just broke down all these different TV shows that propagandize police officers, that propagandize different departments of policing, and this idea that police, like, they use Miami Vice for an example when they said Miami Vice gave people this idea that all of these gun-toting drug dealers were in South Beach, Florida, and in Miami, and that one of the things that these TV shows have done is lead to the changing of perception of the society and of everyday people to think that so many people have these big automatic weapons and so many people do these horrific crimes with these automatic weapons, and so that's why the police need to be militarized to be able to cope with these people, these criminals or these quote unquote thugs or super predators that have these automatic weapons and have all of this artillery. And they said that a lot of that comes from people watching TV shows and people watching movies, and that in reality, they said less than 10% of people are killed with automatic weapons. That majority of people are killed with handguns, and that majority of times police officers don't encounter people who have this heavy artillery like is posed. And they talked about how they spoke about as certain police departments were getting more equipment, they were like taking tanks to picnics and taking pictures with tanks and nicknaming the tanks and doing all these things that were basically like PR, basically, like public relations in a sense, to like make people feel like that police departments need tanks and M16s and and so I felt that was reading that really made me think about when I think about TV shows I watched growing up, most of the times it's rare that a police officer or a police department wasn't the protagonist, even on a show I like a lot, like like The Wire. Like I remember when I got old enough to realize, The Wire's about the cops, and it's very rare that it's about it's never about the cops. But that's it. And they mentioned The Sopranos. There was a Sopranos reference in Rise of the Warrior Cop too.
Was it?
Yeah, I was like, Ari's not here for it.
Was it?
They were. He was going through in the 2000s. He was going through all these different type of raids. That's what has been doing. And so he was talking about like he went through like 4 pages of gambling raids. And he was talking about how like they kicked down the door to like all these different games and all these different gambling games, and one of them they kicked down the door for was like a charity game basically, and they came in with SWAT, and he was saying they went into it like it was Uncle Junior's poker game.
They didn't talk about how they raided Johnny Sack's house?
No, they didn't talk about raiding Johnny Sack's house. And so, I think that is a thing that, media has done and TV shows and movies have done, is that they sort of painted police officers to always be in the right and painted criminals to always be, it's very black and white. When things are black and white, it makes it easier for you to just lock somebody away, or it makes it easier for a justifiable homicide or a justifiable killing, And I think for me, this book does a lot to get out of the idea of criminalization and stigmatization and gets you back into the concept of humanization. I think that was one of the things that really hit home for me, was in the chapter that I read, you really the humanness between the victim and the person doing the victimizing really hit home. How these are still, they talk about how most people who commit violent crimes were victims of violent crimes, and how you have to acknowledge that what happened to them was also traumatizing, not doing it to negate what they have done to somebody else, but that it takes acknowledging all the traumas to be able to basically address altering behavior going forward, and I like the concepts that they put forward about altering behavior patterns, and about she said something about there's I think she said extrinsic or I'm gonna use external for now. External factors to make you want to change, and then internal factors. And she was saying external factors are like going to jail, or the police getting beat up by the police, or things like that, or being arrested, and internal factors are like, pride and, how you see yourself, and wanting to, and empathizing with the person, and not wanting to disappoint yourself, and not wanting to, once you understand what the thing you did, how it affected somebody truly, and understand how you were affected from something like that happening to you, it puts you in a position in which you don't need the threat of jail or the threat of police to keep you from doing something. The threat of disappointing yourself or hurting yourself will keep you from continuing to perpetuate those same actions and patterns. I thought that was very very profound.
I'm trying to find this one little thing. I can't find it right now. But this is, been doing this for a week. This concludes week 1, mass incarceration. and police terrorism. What what book are you looking to go back and reread and go back to read more of? And what book do you think we might not have the chance to read but would fit in with this week of police terrorism, mass incarceration?
Uh, Well, because of the amount that I've read in this right now, I probably would say that this and Asada are probably the two, because of the lack of the amount that I read of them, that I want to go back and read. But if I was to lay them all out evenly from a standpoint of having read them all fully one time, and then looking back at which one, I think that honestly going back and reading the new Jim Crow with the last six with the 6 books that we read since the new Jim Crow some of those points would register with me even more. I think that the new Jim Crow has a little bit of everything within there in some pieces. And I think that for me, just the new Jim Crow was the main book that let me understand how mass incarceration, how these things feed off of mass incarceration. And so I think that would be the number one that I would go back and read. And then I think second after that would probably be this one right here. This one is so far philosophically and ideologically. When people ask about, a lot of the other books pose questions and, what are we going to do about these things that we know don't work? And this is one that, has some answers. And so I like reading this, especially going into the week that we got coming up with some of the books that I know are part of that week. What about you? Do you have any, and the book that I think that could fit in that pops out of me the most? Well, two. One of them is the end of the Angela Davis one that we didn't get to. Our Prison's Obsolete. So that's the number one. But that one we will still read that. We're going to get that into Racial Injustice Week. But I think after that, it's a book called Policing the Black Man that I think is very pertinent. And also Just Mercy by Brian Stevenson, where he talks about he focuses on getting people off of death row a lot. And I think that's another aspect of these things that we didn't really get into, and that's the racism of death row and the idea of death penalty and the inhumaneness of the death penalty. And so I think that those two books, which I recommend people go out and get, and like we said, this is going to be something that we're going to figure out to do in different methods in the future going forward. I think that Policing the Black Man and Our Prison's Obsolete are very...
Okay. Damn, I really can't find this. I'm starting to think maybe I didn't read it. My allergies must have... Yeah. Okay. But the general concept was when politicians or elected officials, I guess those are one and the same. Really. Unless you're appointed. A lot of these people, when they found out that some of these laws and policies and statutes were negatively affecting people of color and black people, it would have almost the opposite effect that you would hope for. Instead of them supporting that law or policy less, they often supported that law and policy more. So that just made me go back into what we were talking about yesterday in our group discussion, that this wasn't an accident. These weren't mistakes made. This weren't decisions made in the best interest for all people. It was purposeful choices, thought out choices, methodical choices, thoughts and decisions made with malice in their hearts about how to disproportionately affect black people and people of color and poor people. So that really kind of saw it. And she had brought up what was it, James Foreman Jr. that was locking up around?
Yeah.
She had brought up that book.
Really?
She had brought up that book. So,
That's good.
and she brought up the new Jim Crow too.
Yeah,
So so I was
reading.
I was looking for a new Jim Crow reference as well. Was there one?
In there?
Yeah.
No, I didn't see one so far, but I did. When we were reading. As we finished reading, Rise of the Warrior Cop. He mentioned the new Jim Crow and Rise of the Warrior Cop, which I thought was very pertinent. And then also he mentioned 2000s like protests in Seattle at the WTO, and he mentioned some of those things, which sort of continued the connection, to other books, that connected, because in Rise of the Warrior Cop, they speak about the way protests have been policed and people organizing and mobilizing and doing demonstrations have been policed throughout history in America, and even before America. And I thought that was I was happy to read that, because that connected Rise of the Warrior Cop to They Can't Kill Us All. And so seeing all, just again, seeing the way that all of these things are connected and interconnected, and reading Rise of the Warrior Cop and seeing how interconnected that will be with the third week, with the demonstrations and the protest week, which I think will be it'll be good to see. I think the group conversations on that third week will be very interesting based on the amount of information that we would have taken in by the time we get to a place where people start talking about tactics and that they think are important to use to rid ourselves of this type of oppression and to rid ourselves of this the system that we living in now.
We're still doing pizza Fridays?
Yeah, I got to get a graphic.
Okay. Okay, let's take a small announcement break. Small announcement break. Today is Wednesday. Always have to double check on the days of the week and which day of the week it is. Today's Wednesday. On Friday night we'll have pizza out here. We'll have free pizza. Come down. Be around 6. You would say around 6, 5 o'clock. My fault. Yeah, I did too. Friday 6 p.m. Pizza, free pizza. Come down, be a part of the group discussion. Maybe read a little bit if you want to. Then Saturday and Sunday we'll be keeping that up, the free breakfast. So come down Saturday and Sunday from 9 a.m. to about noon. 9 a.m. to about noon rather. Group discussion, not group discussion. A free breakfast every weekend this month. Up at the park, up at the Eddie Green place, and also along with that, group discussions every day, 5 p.m. Around 5 p.m. And if anybody is watching this either live or watching it back, and if you would like to read, really all you gotta do is come down. All you gotta do is come down. We'll make some time. We're
gonna start floating up. We're gonna make a pro time mail for people to sign up for reading. We're gonna get that out there. We're gonna get some things out tomorrow.
Okay.
I don't know. People been asking for places to sign up outside in person.
Oh, really? I didn't know. Okay. Scheduling.
Yeah.
But going back to this book, a lot of the language used in the book is very different from the other books. There's a lot of us, we as survivors, and that I thought was really really touching to me. It was really made me stop and think about it while I was reading. And I didn't really touch on this while I was reading that. How many people don't have an experience where they were assaulted or victimized in a situation? How many people, I would guess it's almost like 90% of the people, if not all. How many people have been victimized by somebody's actions? And that could, that all varies. Some is, if you got jumped and say you got jumped, you're victimized. Say I just got, somebody stole my speaker. Somebody stole my speaker. I got it back. And I don't want that person to go to jail at all. I do want to know why and who did it. But I do not want that person to go to jail or prison. So next week to tomorrow starts our week 2 of the ongoing teaching, racial injustice.
Yeah.
Racial injustice week. What are you looking forward to reading that week? What are you looking forward to? I know, kind of playing around the schedule still.
Yeah.
So, is there anything just in particular that you're looking forward to reading?
I think for me the review has been very, like, going back and rereading things I read before, or hearing other people's takes on things I read before has been very influential and impactful for me. So I think reading The Color of Law, which was one of the first books I read in the beginning of all of this for me, is going to be something I've been looking forward to, and trying to apply and seeing how other people apply the things that we've read. I think that is a way that we could have did the racial injustice could have been the first week, and then the police terrorism and mass incarceration could have been the second week, and it would have sort of been like reading the things that led to where we were at, but I think that is because of how well we are already accustomed to the police terrorism and mass incarceration. I like that we have went through and read all of these different intricacies to it, and we have seen these different timelines to it, and I think that now going back and reading the timelines of some of this racial history, and really it's just the history of America, I think that it will be easier to sort of to cross-reference things and what things should be fixed, and understanding how we got to this point a little bit better. I think that's one of the things I think that I've also tried to do better, of being able to communicate to people, and that's how we got to this point, and I think that we have between The Color of Law, caste, race, women, and class, and indifference. I think it's called Strange Indifference or something like that. I think all those, it's very specific books within here that I feel like will sort of answer some of the questions of how do we get to this point. And so I think that I'm very much looking forward to rereading The Color of Law again, and I'm also very much looking forward to, for the first time, reading Caste, which is something that I've heard a lot of people talk about. That is a very good book, and has gotten a lot of praise. It's a bigger book. I think that might be the biggest book that we've had so far. So I think that will be a challenge that I'm looking forward to as well. And yeah, I think Color of Law and Caste.
Let's see. Where are we? We're in chapter 5?
Wait, no, I think chapter 6, right?
I think chapter 5.
What? No.
Yeah, there's only 7 chapters.
It was chapter 5.
Policy and Power.
Oh, yeah, we're on chapter 5.
We're in chapter 5.
Yeah.
Looks like we got a little over 100.
Mm-hmm.
A little over 100 more pages.
That's about right.
Depending on whether or not you lead the acknowledgments.
The credits.
Yeah. So I think we're good. I think we're gonna wrap this up. We're gonna finish reading. We are going to finish reading until we reckon.
Only one. We finished all but one book, and we read one book twice, almost halfway twice. So that's what it makes up for that. We read They Can't Kill Us All. Wait, we read They Can't Kill Us All twice.
And we can always go back and if we finish a book early, and we can finish Asada's autobiography.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna wrap this up. Group discussions every day, 5 p.m. ish. 5 p.m. ish. But breakfast 9 a.m. to noon, and pizza Friday nights. Pizza Friday nights. Anybody can read.
Anybody can read.
Come
down.
All right.
Come down.